In this video, we'll talk about overconfidence bias. It refers to our tendency to have overconfidence in our skills, leading us to overestimate our ability to influence decision outcomes and neglect the role of chance. Our memory is fallible. Nearly every conscious experience is stored somewhere in our brain. The difficult part is finding it and pulling it out again. Sometimes the information that comes out is incomplete, distorted, or misleading. Recall hindsight bias, which was discussed in an earlier video. To make matters worse, we show staggering overconfidence in our memory. It is not just we remember things incorrectly, which is bad enough, but we don't even know we remember them incorrectly. We insist that the inaccurate information we pull out of memory is the undeniable truth. Have you seen people at work who express great confidence in their skills or knowledge, only to later learn they had no idea what they were doing? Confidence is generally viewed as a positive attribute. We prefer to collaborate with those who are confident and whose confidence is demonstrated non-verbally through body language instead of verbally. In experiments, participants were asked to pick a partner to complete a task collaboratively. The participants overwhelmingly picked a partner who was confident than the cautious one. The participants particularly liked to work with those who express their confidence through nonverbal communication of body language. In 2019, there was a published report about BSers. According to authors, BSers are the individuals who play the expert without being one. BSers claim knowledge or expertise in an area where they actually have little experience or skill. Over 40,000 participants in this study came from 9 predominantly English-speaking countries. They were asked to rate their knowledge of 16 math topics on a 5-point scale, ranging from never heard of it to know it very well, understand the concept. The trick was that those math topics were fabricated. The topics included proper numbers, subjunctive scaling, and declarative fraction. These math topics didn't exist. So if people rate themselves as being knowledgeable about these topics, they were considered as BSers. You may think people don't like BSers, but the results suggest that BSers were quite popular among their peers. BSers also expressed higher level of overconfidence than non-BSers. Was there a gender difference? Yes, men across all 9 countries were more likely than women to be BSers who had no idea what they were talking about. But their overconfidence made them more likely to be hired, to be promoted, and to get higher salaries. Was there a difference in socioeconomic background? Yes. People from more advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds had more BS than those from disadvantaged backgrounds. People from wealthy families were more likely to play the expert when they had no idea what they were talking about. It's possible they adopted overconfident, pretentious behavior from their parents who were considered successful by the society. What kind of behaviors express confidence? Have strong opinions and bold ideas, have open body language, smile, have eye contact with people. In general, confident people demonstrate a sense of self-assurance. Behaving confidently brings you a lot of benefits in work settings. When you express your confidence, you are more likely to be recommended for hiring. You are more likely to be considered as having leadership potential, regardless of your competence or skill set. Voters are more likely to vote you as their leaders to make decisions on their behalf. People tend to associate confidence with competence, even when the evidence does not support this association. The problem is that it is the same behaviors that express confidence and overconfidence. So, hiring committees, selection committees, and voters need to be very careful to differentiate leadership position candidates whose confidence is warranted and those who are overconfident with an exaggerated belief in their so-called superior competence. Job candidates' overconfidence can be very deceptive. This is why people tend to select overconfident candidates to assume leadership positions, which is dangerous to an organization. People who feel powerful is particularly vulnerable to overconfidence bias. Power is a fundamental aspect of social life. Power is defined as asymmetrical control over resources by allocating or withholding them. Your boss has power over you because your boss has more control over resources by either allocating to you as a reward or withholding them as a punishment. An example is your evaluation done by your boss is tied to your paycheck. An administrator has power over a committee when the administrator vetoes the committee's group decision to assert his or her own power. The feeling of having power leads to overconfidence in the judgment accuracy of one's knowledge. High-power people's judgment tends to be less accurate than low-power people's judgment. Power holders are more likely to make overconfident decisions, putting organizational interest at unnecessary risk. Do you remember in an earlier video, we mentioned that power also makes decision makers more vulnerable to confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is people's tendency to search for and interpret evidence in a way that validates a predetermined assumption or conclusion. We see what we want to see. So far, we've already discussed the two biases that power holders are particularly vulnerable to. These biases and other psychological effects of power work against leaders if they want to make wise decisions. Power, to some extent, is like alcohol. It's exhilarating and motivating, but too much of it undermines people's judgment. Many leaders take office with an ambitious to-do list. If they are not aware of the detrimental effect of power on their decision-making, they fall prey to the biases and make poor decisions. Then a crisis will hit. The trigger of the crisis could be a lawsuit, an economic recession, or declining revenue. Budget hasn't kept up with its task. Employees begin to leave. Soon, the organization is in full crisis mode. In 2019, Education Week reported the results of research study about how much school principals' subject content knowledge mattered. 41% of principals believed they had the content knowledge necessary to help their teachers improve instruction, when only 21% of teachers agreed. On the matter of handling parent complaints, 97% of principals believed they can be trusted to handle parent complaints in a fair and even-handed way, whereas only 64% of teachers thought so. More important, 27% of teachers didn't even think their principals handled parent complaints fairly, and only 3% of principals thought so. Leaders' overconfidence bias is not constrained in education. If you observe corporate leaders, politicians, government officials, and even religious leaders, you can probably find a lot of examples. If you are a researcher in the field of leadership and you only collect data from leaders but exclude the data about the people around the leaders, your results are problematic. With the overconfidence bias, leaders are not good judges of their own leadership skills. They rarely admit that they are not effective in organizations. To conduct better quality research in leadership, you need to include the data you collect from the people around the leaders. Sometimes you get very different pictures from leaders and the people around them. Earlier, we talked about overconfident BSers who play the expert when they have no idea what they were talking about. What about experts? Are experts more cautious as they offer their expertise? Surprisingly, experts are more vulnerable to the overconfidence bias than lay people. An expert might make the same inaccurate prediction as someone unfamiliar with the topic. But experts are more likely to be convinced that they are right. When we identify ourselves as experts, we become reluctant to admit our mistakes and failures. Our egos are attached to being smart and the best in our knowledge area. We distance ourselves from those that have less knowledge than us. This psychological distance makes us difficult to earn others' trust. We might also be afraid that non-experts and outsiders outsmart us. Over time, the very expertise that leads to our success can make us overconfident, ignorant, and arrogant. The false sense of expertise can, in turn, lead us to feel that we have the license to be more close-minded in our views. In this video, we talked about the overconfidence bias. It is our tendency to have overconfidence in our skills, leading us to overestimate our ability to influence decision outcomes. Now it is time for you to provide an example of the overconfidence bias and reflect how it influences decisions made by you or the people around you.